All right. I also want to do an acknowledgement of country. The land where I work and a lot of the schools I work with is Wurundjeri land, and I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of this land and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This is a photo of me in Bali, circa about 1988. I had to fact check that with my beautiful mum. So just for a bit of context, I grew up on and off in Bali, Indonesia. Both my parents are ethnomusicologists, which means ethno meaning people, music meaning music, and ology or ologist meaning the study of. So that means they studied music of other cultures, and just so happens that they both studied music of Southeast Asia. So I was immersed in cultures that were non-Western from a very early age. And I would think that that's had an impact on the way that I perceive the world. You don't go from Flemington to Ubud on and off without noticing some stark differences between what's in one place and what's in the other. So I just thought it was worth mentioning that that's part of my lived and life experience. I also have lived in life experience learning a second language and not being very good at a second language. So I think it's worth just mentioning a little bit of that. Okay, so a bit about what I do in my consulting. I'm an evidence-based literacy support person for a lot of schools in and around Victoria. I'm an instructional coach. I've been doing that for about 2 years and I absolutely love it. I am focused very much on explicit instruction and what that looks like in the classroom. I've taught with Nathaniel Swain, Melanie Henry at La Trobe for the last 2 years, teaching undergrad students that, and it's been an absolute joy. Also strong focus on multi-tiered systems of support. And that might be something you hear me say a lot tonight. Oh, Rupert, you've taken over. That might be something you hear me say a lot tonight. And if that's not an area you're completely across, feel free to email me and I can send you some research there. Are you, can I
Co-host, so I was just trying to let some more people in, my bad. I've got them incoming now.
Okay. You're just trying to throw me off. It won't work. Nothing can stop me from talking, Rupert. I'll keep going. Okay. So I'm also a critical friend to a lot of schools. So this is my job now. So I've started doing my consulting full time and I'm absolutely loving it. And it's been really successful so far, which has been really exciting and, really fulfilling. So tonight's webinar, what you can expect, I'm going to explain the process of a scoping review. I'll try and make it interesting. I've not brought out any interpretive dance, but if we see people might need it, we will include it. I'm going to talk about some gaps I found in the literature. I'm going to talk about the findings I made and then further recommendations. I'm going to show you what a science of learning literacy block should look like, should and can look like, but it's not prescriptive. It's not the be all and end all. There are other ways to do it. This is just the way I've seen it done in a number of schools. And I'm going to share resources with you and I'm going to ask you for some feedback because I'm always wanting to improve. So that's tonight. These are the science of reading and science of learning references that you might hear me say throughout the evening. If you hear these and you don't know what they mean, feel free to ask questions. I probably can't go into science of reading theory as much tonight. It's just not enough time. But so I'm not assuming people know this, but I am going to think most of you know it. And if you don't know it, that might be an area you are looking to upskill in before you implement anything in your settings. So I'll be talking about the simple view of reading, which is Goff and Tunmer's work from 1986, 2 years before that photo of me on the motorbike was taken. Scarborough's reading rope from 2001. We'll be talking about, I don't talk about it as much, but it's definitely underpinning Joan Sedita's writing rope, and talking about the National Reading Panel Report, which is commonly referred to as NRP in the literature. There are 3 national inquiries. They all had the same recommendations, but I will be leaning more heavily on that one in my research. And then talking about multi-tiered systems of support and response to intervention models. So if they are things that are completely new to you, they are great starting spots for understanding the science of reading and how what the research looks like. And I won't be going into too much detail. So I apologize in advance if that is an area, and I'm so happy to take emails and respond if that's something you'd like to talk about later on. Okay, so let's get started. For some context, I did the master's, my second master's degree, Master's of Education, specializing in language and literacy at the end of last year. And we had to do a research subject for our master's. So I wanted to do a scoping review, which is a type of literature review that aims to map how much research is out there on a specific topic. So looking at the range and nature of the evidence and any gaps in the literature. I also did a literature review, preliminary one, just to see and analyse the current literature around evidence-based instruction and EAL learners in Australia. So I did a mini literature review, and then I did a more in-depth one in the scoping review. The way the assessments fell, that's just the way the cookie crumbled for that one. So for some more context, I have spent the last 6 years of my career teaching in the northwestern suburb regions of Melbourne, with schools with high EAL population, so nothing really below 77%. Last year, I was a leading teacher and instructional coach in a northwestern region school that adopts evidence-based practices. And it had a very low ICSIA, and ICSIA stands for Indicator of Socioeconomic Advantage. So if you have low socioeconomic advantage, that's just something to be mindful of when we think about data. And through working at these schools, I noticed significant differences in the NAPLAN results that were not solely aligned to the SES value. So I'm going to go through that now because data always tells a story. I have a t-shirt, and if it was a little bit cooler in Melbourne, I might be wearing it, but it's too cold tonight to just be in a t-shirt, that says without evidence, without evidence, it's just an opinion, or without data, it's just an opinion, because we can have all the opinions in the world, but we need solid data before we make instructional decisions. So having spent time at these 6 schools, one was not using science of learning principles, and I'm going to talk about them in a moment, and 2 were. And we're going to look at their data now. Oh, after this slide. So the problem with this research and what I found is that there's not very much literature about how evidence-based practices like structured literacy impact EAL learners in an Australian context. There is lots, and a water bottle, there's lots of research in the US about supporting Spanish populations, and it talks about supporting how to support those learners, but it doesn't always translate to an Australian context, because in our classrooms we have far more than one language. Another problem is a definition of what constitutes an EAL learner. So they are wide and they differ depending on the source. The EAL curriculum, especially in the state I'm from, in Victoria, is a bit ambiguous and unclear. I have some knowledge at the moment that they are reviewing that and about to update it, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. But at the moment, it's quite different to what the Australian curriculum and the Vic curric looks like for an EAL learner. And I've got a slide on that later. If we have time, I'll go through that. But if I don't have time, it will be in, you'll get these slides. So there's just some questions around who made that and where they got the benchmark for that from. And then the way each state department collects data on EAL students does vary. So there's a lack of consistency there. And our schools, we have beautiful, like amazing schools in Victoria, like Western English Language School. And I know there's one in Geelong as well, who are, you know, working with a lot of newly arrived EAL students, but none of them do NAPLAN. So we don't actually have any knowledge about how they're going in that setting, which is, it would be better if we knew. So now we're going to have a look at this data. And before I keep going, I took a photo of this. I'm just going to show you, I've taken all these screen grabs from the My School website. So in Australia, we have the My School website. You can put any school in there and you get all the data available to you about that school. So I've taken screen grabs of the data I wanted to share, and I've condensed it for time's sake. So this mystery school is not using science of learning. This school I've worked at. They're not using any science of learning. Over here, you can see they have 84% EAL, so quite high in a school in Melbourne. Over here is the distribution of socio-educational advantage, SEA. I just want to talk to you. I just took a photo of this because I just want to talk to you about what this represents. So the distribution of SEA divides students into 4 quarters from least, this bottom quarter, to most advantaged, to give context to a school's index of community socio-educational advantage, ICSEA value. So schools on the My School website, the My School website will show this. So when we see schools that are heavier down this end, that generally means they're less advantaged and than up here. So when we see a big jump in this one here, we know that they are a higher SEA school. If there's any questions about that, please pop them in the chat. But I know Melanie Henry's here, she'll be able to answer any of them. So this is a school not using the science of learning. This is their socioeconomic situation. So quite heavy in the bottom bands and high EAL, no science of learning principles at the school, and this is their NAPLAN data. So anything in the red or the pink is not great. The white is hard to get, so their spelling is going okay. But the red does indicate, it's usually an indication that something needs to be supported or looked into a little bit more, probably looking at some of their instruction and what's happening there. So that's mystery school number 1. Now I want to look at mystery school number 2. So this is a science of learning school with 77% EAL. I say beginner, I'd say they're more on the way to consolidating. They've been implementing science of learning practices for quite a long time, at least a good 2 to 3 years. They've done a very good job of upskilling their staff. And they have also got quite a high, quite a lower distribution of economic advantage. And their data shows it's white and then trending more towards the green. So we can see there is movement here. And I know that this data used to be more red than this. So they have made huge gains in not very much time. So when I read this data, I think, okay, that's quite promising. It shows that the instruction is having an impact irrespective of the socioeconomic area and background of the school. So now I want to show you Mystery School 3, which is also using science of learning principles, but is very established. Their teachers are very knowledgeable in what science of learning is, what's it about, what their practice looks like. They have ongoing coaching, but they also have a very high EAL population. And different to the others, they have a higher socioeconomic background. And then this is their data. So this made me a little bit sad, like happy for the school, but sad because it made me think, oh, money matters. The amount of advantage a school population has a direct impact on the outcomes of that school. Until, especially ones with high EAL, until I met Marsden Road Primary School. This is another very established science of learning school, and their leader, their principal, Manisha Gazula, is an extremely experienced science of learning advocate, and this is their population of EAL students. And not only is it at 90%, but most of those students come from refugee, high trauma backgrounds. It is in the very western suburbs of Sydney, and this is their distribution of socioeducational advantage. So you can see 84% of this school is in the lower band of socioeconomic advantage, and this is their data. I hang my hat on Marsden Road a lot. I'm also very excited because I'm visiting them on Monday. I'm flying up to Sydney and finally getting to get a tour of the school and chat to Manisha. Manisha was our keynote at Sharing Best Practice this year, and she is there are so many amazing people in this space, and she is one of them. So to me, this says the instruction that we use with our EAL learners can have a huge impact on their learning, and it thankfully is not totally dependent on our socioeconomic background. So I'm going to leave that there for a minute. Are there any questions about that data? I can't see the chat. Where's the chat gone? If there are any questions, Rupert, feel free to call out any of them. Oh, hang on, there's the chat.
So Karen was just asking for the New Zealand contingent. What do those scores mean? So the numerical scores? I think that's right, Karen.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Mel.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mel. Yeah, thank you. I hope that's answered. All right. So what does this look like in the classroom? I'm assuming many of us are teachers. We want to know what this looks like. And the research says what works for monolingual learners also in this context and with these instructional practices works for our multilingual learners as well. So I'm going to take you through this. The first hour needs to include phonemic awareness, phonics instruction, and then I've done P2 question mark because in some schools, your grade 4s might still need phonics instruction depending on what they've had and what they've received in their prior learning. So in an ideal world, we would stop teaching phonics at grade 2 because they've been taught all the code, but we know ideal worlds are just that, and they're not entirely representative of what we're working with in the classroom. A lot of these schools are using spelling mastery from 3 to 6, which is a direct instruction approach to spelling, created by Ziggy Engelman. They've got fluency pairs, so students are practicing their reading every day. They've got explicit handwriting instruction, and they're unpacking high frequency word or heart words. That would be in the lower end of primary, but if I had a 15-year-old who did not understand how to read English, I would still be using high frequency words and heart words with them because they're going to come across them a lot. So I would be explicitly teaching them what that looked like. So this first hour, as you can see, is underpinned by a lot of the research that came out and said these are the big 5 that we need to teach, as well as vocabulary and comprehension. So what a lot of these schools do is have their core literacy block in the first hour, and then in the second hour is reading rich texts that are appropriate for that context. So that school and that setting and that age group and their needs. And then within that text, there is explicit instruction of vocabulary. There is sentence level instruction that is explicit about what a subject is, what a predicate is, what a sentence is, what a clause is, parts of speech, grammar. And what a lot of high EAL schools are using is an oral language program called Story Champs. Story Champs, you're going to hear me talk a little bit more about that tonight. So I will pause that one. But I just saw a few more questions pop in. Oh, go back.
Just us about the future of NAPLAN. I think it's okay now.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so this is the ideal setup, and what those schools getting strong results are using is what this looks like. Okay. So when I talk about science of learning schools, what am I talking about? This is not everything, but this is most of it. Schools that adopt a systematic, structured, and synthetic phonics program. Before I understood this, I would be teaching my students. I would pick up a book, Mrs. Wishy-Washy. I would read Mrs. Wishy-Washy, and I was like, I've taught them W, makes a sound, great. It was not systematic, and it was not structured, and it was not synthetic. It was me going, oh, I taught them one sound, but I didn't have it written down, and I wasn't following a sequence. So we know that an SSP, as it's abbreviated to, is a fundamental aspect of a science of learning approach and aligned with research. They're using a literacy block that incorporates all the inquiries from that national reading panel, which is in a folder I'm going to give you at the end of this. They're using all the recommendations from that. They're using evidence-aligned programs like Story Champs, Spelling Mastery, The Writing Revolution, and Strategies from Teach Like a Champion, abbreviated to TLAC, which is written by Doug Lemov. And again, you'll get all these slides, so don't worry if you need to remember them. There's strong scope and sequences for all subjects. So everyone knows in week 4, I'm teaching this. In week 5 of term 3, I'm teaching this. And there is daily review peppered throughout so that they know people are going to be revisiting content. Not we do fractions in term 2 and then the grade 2s do fractions in term 2 and then they don't do it again until term 3, grade 3, right? We're doing constant rehearsal. They're using a knowledge-rich curriculum. Now, when I say no inquiry, I mean not as a basis for learning. We teach the knowledge and we inquire from a place of knowledge. That's a Nathaniel Swainism, but we inquire from a place of knowledge. We do not teach via an inquiry approach where students have to figure something out for themselves. We teach first and then we ask the questions. And there's explicit and responsive teaching instructional approaches are used in every subject. And then there's the multi-tiered systems of support, which is about intervention and how we pick up the tail end of the students that need our support and how we support them. And these schools have invested a number of hours in upskilling and improving teacher knowledge because through no fault of their own, many teachers can be have done lots of study but may not know all of this. So it's important that we upskill and learn these areas in order to support, you know, our students and their learning. So my literature review. Multiple studies that show us what best practice approaches to teaching English look like based on evidence instruction. So these are the MOTS, National Reading Panel, Rose and Rowe, not MOTS, but these 3 are the national inquiries. And then we've got Scarborough and we've got Seidenberg. These are all about the science of reading. These are the big names behind the science of reading. There are some studies about the impact of direct instruction approaches for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander student learning outcomes. And a lot of them come from a man named Noel Pearson. I'm going to talk about him a little bit more later on. And then many oral language studies based in the US that focus on supporting Spanish populations. So again, not completely transferable to an Australian context, but suggest including EAL students' first language in all instruction. So that is a nice idea. It is not really applicable in an Australian context. When I was doing this research, I took a sample size. I had a class of 19 and I asked them to write the languages that they speak at home, language or languages. So out of 19 students, I got 13 different languages in my classroom of grade 4s last year. I can't learn 13 languages and teach them in a different way according to those languages. So I have to figure out how I can get my best bang for buck instruction-wise, and they were learning using these principles, those science of learning principles. So that was the school doing a good job, and they were using the science of learning principles, and those learners were having strong learning outcomes based on that. So my scoping review and my research, and a shout out to Mel and also Tanya Seri helped me a lot with this because it was I needed some assistance with this. It was my first real dabble in research of this sort. So I saw all these principles working in practice in the setting. So I kind of went practice first, research second. And I said, okay, what exists about this working in an Australian context? So this was my research question. How can a better understanding of evidence-based literacy instruction lead to improving the learning outcomes for EAL students? That was my research question. And that's me studying. I didn't usually look quite that happy. Okay. So when you do a scoping review, you have to come up with search terms. So these were the search terms I used using 3 educational databases. You would usually do far more than 3. I was very limited for time, and it's not, you know, it's not a PhD. So for this scoping review, these were the categories and the search terms I used, and it yielded 172 results. Of those 172, I could use 10 that fit my criteria that were universal. And there were none from Australia. No publications in Australia that existed in these categories in my searches. Now, it was a small search, but it was disappointing to find none. So this is what I found from these 10 that were universal. All 10 papers argued that evidence-based instructional techniques that support the literacy acquisition of a monolingual learner are beneficial and recommended for EAL students too. The literature that I analysed stated a need for more in-depth research about works for EAL learners, not just in Australia, but also internationally. There is just not as much research in this area. Many of the papers argued that direct instruction programs, so direct instruction means it is scripted, something like spelling mastery, big DI, and explicit direct instruction. I would actually change that right now to explicit instruction. It doesn't have to be EDI, which is the Hollingsworth and Ybarra text. Benefits all learners, especially students whose first language is not English. MTSS and RTI approach to intervention benefits yields the most beneficial outcomes for all learners, and especially those in the primary areas. To be fair, I did not analyze as much secondary. So because my area is primary, I was looking a lot at the primary data, and if it was secondary, I didn't include as much of the secondary. Another prominent feature in the exam and literature was the importance of phonological awareness, which is the ability to blend, manipulate, and segment sounds, and oral language development as a precursor for successful reading outcomes. They are precursors for monolingual learners, and they are precursors for bilingual or EAL or trilingual or however many languages a student has. They are huge precursors for strong and successful reading outcomes. There were 3 standout recommendations from my review. 1, we need to expand the research about EAL instruction practices in an Australian context and strengthen MTSS and RTI implementation. We need to include more direct instruction and explicit instruction approaches for EAL learners. And we need to prioritize phonological awareness and oral language in early literacy programs. I feel like a lot of people working with English as additional language learners are already doing elements of this. So I don't think there's any, I wasn't surprised by my findings. I was a bit sad that there was not more in Australia. I want to talk about Story Champs, which is one of the best oral language programs I've ever come across. I am not being paid to share this information with you. I do communicate with the owners of this program semi-frequently on Instagram. So Story Champs is an oral language narrative program. I just got this from their website. Multi-tiered language program helps educators and clinicians promote academic language of diverse students. It's founded in the US. And I'm in the research folder that I'm sharing with you. I'm sharing their research they shared with me. Oh, here. So this is what I'm giving you, and this is the Story Champs folder. So if you want to have a little bit more of a deep dive there, that's available to you. I also reached out to them and said I was doing this talk, and they said if you have any questions or you want to talk to them about Story Champs, you can email them on that email. They also have narrative language measures, which helps to assess the oral language and the narrative language understanding of our learners. It's a very comprehensive language assessment, but it's incredibly helpful for teachers. I'm going to keep going. Oh, we're nearly finished. So I mentioned earlier about the EAL curriculum, and then I've got a question mark there because I'll just show you on this side on the left are the examples of the Vic Curric, and then this is the beginner reader. So in an ideal world, this would come out one at a time. So in a foundation level, they use knowledge of letters and sounds to read CVC words. Beginner reader EAL, recognize some letters of the alphabet. I just feel like the expectation and what we could be asking our EAL learners to do is more than this, more than recognizing some letters. They blend, segment, and manipulate phonemes in one syllable words. So that's phonemic awareness. This is identify some sounds. I feel like they could be doing this as well. They read some high frequency words and identify boundary punctuation, read short familiar text. I mean, I don't know how they can go from identifying some sounds to then suddenly they can read. I just feel very confused about the EAL curriculum. And last year, when there was a focus group about the EAL curriculum, a lot of us felt that way. And when I speak to people, we are all a little bit confused by the levels in Victoria about that. So I just thought I'd show a little bit of the contrast there. Okay, resources that I would recommend. It's worth discussing Noel Pearson. I'm going to give you a moment to read that one. So Noel Pearson is a famous Indigenous activist. He was a huge part of the Yes vote, a huge advocate for the Yes vote. He's written for the quarterly essay about education and equality in Australia. I recommend getting your hands on that if you can. And this podcast that he has done is one of the Boyer lectures. And if I had my way, every La Trobe student would be listening to that as a reading because it is so telling about the impact explicit instruction can have with our English as additional language learners and our Indigenous populations. But it also highlights the catastrophic impact of being illiterate in our Indigenous populations. And I think more of us should learn about this at university when we are studying. And so it's worth knowing about Noel Pearson because he is a huge advocate for explicit direct instruction and direct instruction. And his website, he has a website called Good to Great Schools Australia, and they have resources and lessons that you can use in your classroom that have been created and are educational about Indigenous lives and culture, and they're politically aligned with not politically aligned, like they're worth looking into. Podcast recommendations, learning to read with Manisha Gazula. So that is the Marsden Road Principle. If you're not across the Education Research Reading Room podcast with Ollie Lovell, I highly recommend it. I have forced my poor long-suffering mother to listen to these up and down the Geelong freeway as we go back and forward to our houses together. So she's aware of all of these. And then Claude Goldenberg is one of the main advocates for science of reading and EAL learners. So this podcast I've listened to this one a few times, particularly insightful. These are the books I would recommend if this is an area you are looking at upskilling in. There is an explicit direct instruction just for English learners book. This exists without the for English learners as well, that a lot of schools use to support their instructional approaches and instructional models. The Literacy Foundations for English Learners. This was a good text as well, but very was difficult in terms of applying it to an Australian context, but it's still I still found it helpful. Claude's book was fantastic, and I always recommend Reading for Life by Lynn Stone. It is just the most easily palatable but impactful text about science of reading. So they are my top 4 book recommendations. I've got them all here. You can see mine have been dog-eared and have notes all coming out of them, but they are the texts I would recommend. I have here this is the QR code for you, but this is a link to my research folder. And this is what it looks like. So I've put the DI and Indigenous, I've put the work of Noel Pearson in there. I've put both my literature review and my scoping review in there. All I ask is that if you use it, you cite me. And then I've put other research and the story champs, and anything Aero's published recently is also in here. If you don't have time to scan that, don't worry. We will make sure you get the slides. And so we will go to questions now, and I can see there's more in the chat. I would love if you could please scan this one and provide some feedback. It's very difficult online because usually when I present, I would have lots of discussions and chat with people and have turn and talks and do checks for understanding, but I can't do that in this capacity. So I feel like I've just talked at you for a very long time. But I would love to open up, Rupert, if we can just leave that up for a moment so people can keep scanning it. But I
Yep.
would love to open up the platform to questions, to people. Oh, we've got 53 participants in here now. So,
Yep.
oh, thank you for everyone going through the NAPLAN stuff there. Oh, thanks, Sam. Yes, Sam's been doing amazing work
Yeah.
in
Um,
her.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Leah. That was what a fabulous talk, and to sort of dip between the worlds of the practical and your research and how it all ties together. It's quite interesting to learn how there is zero out there on that research in Australia, which I thought there'd be something. So I hope that sort of maybe piques your interest in a potential PhD or someone in this room perhaps to take on that take that load on. Yeah, amazing talk, and also just the data you shared at the start, the NAP plan, just showing the impact that this sort of practices can have for our learners, regardless of the socioeconomic context. It's so
Yeah.
powerful. So yeah, really keen to throw to the floor. I just thought before I do that, we've recorded this talk, and if you just put your name in this newsletter link here, if you want to, that's by the Spellcast newsletter, and I can make sure that everyone who signed up to that will get a recording and the slides and the links as well, Leah. So if you didn't
Yeah,
catch that,
perfect.
we'll get
And
that.
I've just put my details up here,
Great.
including my email. So if you would like to email me, you are more than welcome. I share whatever I can. The papers I use for my research review are behind an academic library. I can't share them for ethical reasons, but my scoping review has my reference list, so you'll be able to see them in there.
Great.
I'm sorry about the NAPLAN questions about the numbers. I will add more into that next time I do it.
No problem. So there's a question from Meg here. So Meg says, I'm a speech pathologist and find it really difficult to understand and interpret EAL reports to understand um, where they are where you would expect whether they are where you would expect given their exposure to English or if they are falling behind. Do you have any suggestions or resources for improving my understanding of this? Thank you, Meg.
Meg, if you're here, can you unmute and unpack this a bit more? Because I'm not a speech pathologist. I don't know what EAL report you're talking about.
Oh,
Oh, just unmute, Meg. We can see you, but yeah,
yeah,
thanks.
good.
Hello, hi,
Hi.
thank you.
No, you're so welcome.
I'm working in Victoria, so I'm referring to the school-based reports that are on the EAL curriculum.
Yeah, yeah. So, I don't have suggestions or resources. All I can say is it confirms that we are all a little bit confused about that curriculum and where they're at. Like, I feel like if you got a report that said this child knows this many phonemes and this many graphemes and this is the support they need, it would be far more explicit and helpful for you. So I don't have any suggestions there or resources for decoding that curriculum or those reports. Sorry.
No, that's all right, thank you.
Thanks, Meg. There's a question from Diane. Do you have any recommendations for reading recording journals for home reading that are science of reading aligned?
Like a take home book. I know Little Learners make them, Diane, and I know a school that did it themselves. They made their own one. Yeah, thanks, Amy. The new EAL curriculum is coming out in term 4. Yeah, okay. We wait with bated breath. So it came out today, Kelly. Amazing. We'll check the VCAA website because I was looking at it last night. So of course it came out today when I don't have time to check it. So I will go and check it. Thanks, everyone. Maybe we should do a deep dive together. Um, so in terms of reading recording journals, I mean, as long as what they're taking home has code, Diane, that they've been taught, it's not really a science of reading research behind a reading log, like as long as the reading log is documenting a text that is appropriate and has code knowledge that they have, that's fine. I think that's what you mean. Please correct me if I've got that wrong. Oh, there you go. Leslie O'Donoghue. See, I'm surrounded by amazing people who have lots of knowledge in different areas. Thanks, Leslie. So Leslie's written Alison Clark from Spellforbet has a downloadable, printable home reading journal, which is aligned to science of reading. There you go.
Yeah, awesome suggestions. Karen's got so Karen's based in New Zealand, so quite close to where
Yeah.
I am actually. And so I hope you don't mind, Karen, if I sort of read this one out. So I'm in New Zealand, and my biggest issue is the lack of bilingual assessors to help determine the level of understanding of their first language as
Yeah.
opposed to English. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts around that. And Karen, if you're welcome to jump in and add some more to
Oh,
that if you want to too.
yeah, Karen,
So,
this is not an area I don't think I'm going to have much support for you here. We had interpreters, but we don't have any way of gauging how much knowledge they have in their first language when they enter our schools and our classrooms.
Yeah, so I'm what's called an RTLB. So I've been teaching 33 years, and now I specialize in helping children with learning and behavior problems. And so in my area, we have a lot of migrant children that come for agricultural and farming work. And so they can't speak any English. And so if there is a problem with their language, then it's hard for me to help the teachers because I can't get assessors to find out what their first language is like before they're having problems with their second language.
Yeah.
And so that's my biggest difficulty. And Rupert knows I use a lot of evidence-based reading instruction and things like that, but it's how do you determine when they're having difficulty? And there's no research on that as well.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that I wish I had answers for everyone, but I just
Yeah.
it's a
Leslie
really
O'Donoghue looks like she might
underfunded.
have thought. Leslie O'Donoghue says, I have this conversation as an inclusion advisor, speech pathologist in the Northern Territory. Can talk to this if you like. I think I
Yes,
would like
please, Leslie, unmute.
that. Come off
Leslie,
mute and
Leslie and
jump
I
in,
did our
Leslie.
Leslie and I did our masters together, and she's just moved up to the Darwin. Leslie, take
Yeah, that's
the
right.
floor.
Sorry, I can't figure out how to put my camera on with my current configuration, but it is really hard for even a speech pathologist to do assessments to find out this because formal assessments aren't appropriate for, in different languages, of course. So we can't do a clinical evaluation of language in English because that wouldn't give us a fair impression of the child's language skills. And we can't really get it translated because the norms wouldn't be right for the assessment either. And so it's one of the big things I'm always talking about is, are we looking at a language difference? So a child that's got, different language skills because of their background, or are we looking at a language deficit? And I have really found that talking to the families, if you can access some kind of support for translation, is going to tell you a lot more than any kind of formal assessment. Even just observing the child interact with the family. I was actually talking about with a child about a child at a school today, and there is one interpreter in the whole of Darwin that speaks this language that this child speaks. And but I could see, even at pickup time, the way that he was interacting with his family indicated to me that he had real struggles in his home language as well. So I don't know if that helps, but it is a tricky space for even people that are trained to assess language.
And Leslie, when you say you could tell when he communicated with his primary caregivers that there was language difficulties there, what were some of the mannerisms?
So
that you
in this
observed?
instance, it was a child with very limited language skills, so it stood out more. And it is true that children that have something like developmental language disorder, sometimes it's a lot more subtle. But there are kind of caregiver sort of surveys that you can ask questions about, about do they have trouble following instructions? Do they understand about positional language and those sorts of things that go a little bit deeper? Because a developmental language disorder can really fly under the radar. But in this instance, the child was presenting very similarly with his carers and the same kind of vocalizations and gestures and things than it when he spoke when he was with his family. So it was really clear that there was a significant difficulty there in both areas, and it was really difficult because the parents don't speak English, and as I said, getting a translator was really difficult. So just observing them in that instance told us a lot.
And it's worth mentioning, Karen's just written she did a master's in developmental language delay and disorders, DLD, and it's worth mentioning Leslie is a speech pathologist as well. Am I correct in saying that, Leslie?
Yeah, I'm a speech pathologist and teacher.
Speech pathologists by trade have got more training than your average teacher in what a developmental language delay or compared to, like, I was not trained in that as in my teaching degree. So all I would know is that there was expressive and receptive difficulties, but not how to support them. Yeah.
So Leah, I know there are questionnaires that you can ask parents to
Families.
go a little bit, to carers, and to go a little bit deeper in this. And if you like, I can, look into that.
What I might do is add a folder to that shared folder that I shared with everyone, Leslie. And could you pop those questionnaires? I'll just call them Leslie's questionnaires to keep it simple. And if you could pop them in there for people like Karen who are asking these incredibly wonderful questions that we just can't answer, that would be really great.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, Karen. Great to connect people from South New Zealand and the Northern Territory, like right at the top as well. So I love that we can bridge time and space. Any other questions from the chat? I think lots of people are excited about the new curriculum and
I know, I'm seeing that too. I can't believe they brought it out today of all days. It's like they knew I wouldn't be able to see it. But no, thank you, Kelly, for dropping that in the chat. Probably people are all having a look at that now.
Are there any other questions for Leah from the floor? We'll give it a minute of wait time.
And if you haven't done that feedback, I'm just going to share that again one more time. But please, I'd love some feedback about what you thought about tonight. Anything I could do or include. Now I will include more about, I think more about learning difficulties in there next time.
I have a question, Leah, while people are percolating on anything else, just around, I guess, knowledge-rich curriculum and how that's sort of, if you could talk to that a little bit in an EAL context, if it sort of looks different, how it looks, what best practice sort of knowledge-rich curriculum looks like in your experience.
When we talk about a knowledge-rich curriculum, we talk about teaching our students about the world around us. So rather than sort of it being quite central and, me, my life, my community, which is all very important. We just also talk about how civilizations began and storytelling and farms and plants and animals and the world around us. So when I've watched schools with high populations of EAL students do this, it usually means more preloading with explicit vocabulary and maybe changing some of the language. So they might use a program like Core Knowledge, which is a website that has downloadable curriculum. And then and when I've worked with schools or when I've created slides using that program, I have tweaked it so that the language is accessible and at a level where I've known the students that are going to be learning from it will be able to make sense of it. An example of that would be, this is for a rich text, not a knowledge-rich curriculum, but we did Fantastic Mr. Fox at one of the schools I was at. I was making the slides. Fantastic Mr. Fox is made by Roald Dahl. And Roald Dahl talks about one of the farmers eating a lot of dumplings. Now, the students in my care knew dumplings, but they knew the dumplings that you have when you go to eat Vietnamese food or eat Chinese food. So they did not know that he meant sort of the dumplings that you have with maple syrup. So we had a explicit vocabulary slide where we talked about this dumpling and this dumpling, and this is the dumpling we're talking about. So throughout the text, there wasn't a misunderstanding based on a common knowledge in that population, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Got someone asking about any info on when the ACARA EAL curriculum will be updated. It sounds like there's a lot of people are just trying to find that sort of good curriculum to hook onto, eh? So yeah, I mean, any knowledge? I don't know personally.
No, neither. I'm out of the loop there. Thanks, Karen, for your kind comment. I hope it was okay. There is a webinar for the new curriculum. Wow, everybody. Oh, I think, and also Aero have one coming up as well. Let me get the link for that for you. I signed up for it last night. I'll get that and put it in the chat too. Aero webinar. EAL. Oh, ARC are doing one as well. Do you have Kelly? Do you have to be a DET employee to attend that one? Yeah, government schools only. I won't be able to go to that. Yeah, no, I won't be able to go to that one. But I know Aero did one that everyone could go to as well. I'll just see. Yeah, the Aero one's open to everyone. Let's see if I can find it while we're here. Feel free. Topics. I can't find it. I'll send it to Rupert so that he can. Yeah, Amy. I've been working with the Catholic system as well. High population EAL at the one I'm at as well. I'll find the link to the Aero one and I'll send it to. Yes. Thanks, Alex. Oh, thanks, everybody.
Great. Okay, question from Bradley. Any suggestions for primary specialist teachers engaging EAL students with a short lesson time? We're trying to avoid using Translate on our devices.
Bradley, do you want to unmute and unpack that a bit more for me? Bradley. Oh, you're at a hair appointment. Good for you. Good for you going to a webinar at a hair appointment. Okay.
That's awesome. That's a big
Yeah.
thing there.
I love that for you. Yeah, okay, any primary special. Oh, so you mean like in you're a special teacher, like you're doing PE or art or something, and you're trying to engage them? Yes, I do have a suggestion there. Unpack any vocabulary they may not understand on some slides or on the whiteboard before you teach your content. What, Bradley, could you just put in there? Everyone's laughing at your hair appointment comment, which I love. Bradley, could you just say what your special subject is in the chat? No, you don't have to unmute. That's fine. Science. Yes. Oh, definitely science. You would need to be doing some preloading of vocabulary before you teach that lesson. So if you're talking about, I'm so sorry, my science knowledge of actual science is limited. So yeah, you would be unpacking things like, what does the word photosynthesis mean? You could do a little bit of morphology with those big tier 3 science words before you teach the lesson. Yeah, Leslie's written worked example, visual supports, lots of step-by-step instructions.
Thank you, Bradley. Got a question from oh, sorry.
Sorry?
Hey, Bradley, you're
I'll
off.
book online. Yeah.
Cool.
I have to keep talking to me. I'm like,
Oh. Okay, I'm not sure if you want to be unmuted then. So, Leah, Mel has a question, something that might be interesting to unpack. Why might it be important, I'm sorry, particularly important to spend time on phonological awareness for EAL learners?
Yeah. So we know that being able to segment, blend, and manipulate sounds is a precursor to being to having stronger reading outcomes. So working on phonological awareness, and I'm working with a school at the moment that has high EAL population, and what we see commonly with these students is they might be able to start lifting the word off the page, but they might say k, a, t, mat. So they need lots and lots of repetition and support to build and develop the skill of segmenting and blending and manipulating those sounds. Yeah, and Leslie's written because the phonology of their home language may be different. So thinking about being explicit and saying when we're learning English, A says or a or B says bert, so that they know when they can map that grapheme to that phoneme, which will support them with their further reading development. And some sounds may not exist, or they're written differently, or it's a different representation. Karen's written the Reading Doctor app. Oh, and that's made by what's his name, Mel? He's fantastic. He is fantastic, the Reading Doctor. What is his name? I cannot, it's just like left my brain. He, I know Pam really values his work as well. It's got to
He
be
developed the app for his doctorate for he's a speech language therapist or
Oh my God.
pathologist, and he developed the app as part of his work. And
Yes.
yeah,
What's his name?
yeah. He's
Anyway.
Polish. I can't remember his name though, but it's an amazing resource.
Yeah. Yeah, he's fantastic. So there you go. You're all yeah, or some sounds may not be distinct in their home language that are not distinct in English. That's it. Bartek Rajowski. Thank you.
Awesome.
Mel's hung up on the sounds with good reason. The sound, like their phonology may be completely different, but like I said in my sample size when I was working with those grade 4s, there were 13 different languages there. And in a classroom with that much spread, you just aren't going to be able to learn 13 different phonologies before you explicitly instruct in English. So that's why it's important to be explicit. Only in English does this sound map to this letter, this grapheme, and it makes this sound, so that when they're learning it, it's explicit and they can hopefully learn it a little bit faster.
Awesome. I will note it is sort of time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Leah, and thank you everyone for joining us and for the amazing sort of on fire chat today. That was a really active chat. So some great people. Everyone's helping each other and learning from one another.
Thanks,
It's really
everyone.
special. So yeah, thank you, Leah. Do follow Leah on her Instagram. Just I think Leah Myers Consulting, is that right, Leah? I will
Yeah,
get
Leah
that
Myers
to you.
Consulting. Yeah.
And link her up on Instagram, hit her up on the emails. I'm sure, I know Leah would love to connect with people and sort of keep sharing this knowledge and keep this conversation going. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you very much again, Leah, for all your incredible work and your support of the educational community. Just
Oh,
really, you do so much. You can really tell that you love this stuff. So thank you for that, all of that.
thanks, everyone. I hope it was okay. Enjoy the slides. If you have any questions, feel free to email. There's so many people around us with so much knowledge. Tap into it, because there's no way we can possibly know it all. I'm glad, Jackie, that it was relevant for you. Oh, I'd love to see your research, Jackie. If you've got the chat's moving up, I'm going to love heart that. Please show me your work.
Awesome.
Thanks, Alex.
Alrighty, I'm going to close the room now, and I will speak to you.
Does that mean we say goodbye as well,
We
Rupert?
say goodbye, but we can say hello on a different on Instagram or somewhere else.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Alrighty. See you later, everyone. See you next time. Bye.